Hi guys, I'm Adam Wilborn from WhatCulture.
And I'm Andy Murray from WhatCulture. And coming up today, I've got a potential spoiler for the WWE Hell in a Cell 2020 main event. And on top of that, I'm going to tell you why there was no Raw Underground this week.
Plus, Matt Cardona is done with All Elite Wrestling, for now at least. And if you're angry about Aleister Black's theme changing, maybe for once, don't blame WWE. This is the news.
Good to see we finally overcome the Take-Two blues. Anyway, we're going to kick things off by talking Hell in a Cell 2020. The pay-per-view goes down on the 25th of October 2020, obviously. What's the main event of that show going to be? Are we going to get, Alexa Bliss getting possessed live by a murder clown? Are we going to get Roman Reigns beating someone up? Are we going to get Randy Orton versus Drew McIntyre for the 25th time
God, no.
this year? You're in luck. It's none of those things, fortunately, at the moment. New report here from WrestleVotes stating that as things currently stand, the planned main event for Hell in a Cell, inside Hell in a Cell as well, Sasha Banks and Bayley, SmackDown Women's title. It's the most storied rivalry available to the company at the moment. It is something that is, one of the most critically acclaimed things that WWE has put together in a long, long time. Very, very hard. You actually have to go out your way to find people who don't like this. And when it comes to the modern WWE program, when it comes to the product, that is very rare indeed. It's also highly appropriate. Sasha has been in two previous Hell in a Cells, 2019 against Becky Lynch, 2016 against Charlotte. She lost both of those, admittedly, as she tends to do on pay-per-view, but she was in them nonetheless. The 2016 one was particularly notable because that was the first women's Hell in a Cell match ever, and it was also the first time that a woman had ever headlined a WWE pay-per-view. So it's quite appropriate for her to do the same thing in the same stipulation 4 years later with her latest major rival. The hope is that we get several Sasha and Bayley big-time pay-per-view matches spread out over a long period of time, perhaps culminating at WrestleMania 37. But I can't complain about this at all. It's the choice, isn't it?
Yeah, I absolutely love this booking decision. I think you're right. I think if they, it'd be nice to get this to WrestleMania, but if they held off on the whole thing until then, it would be absolutely ridiculous. Look at how they attempted to spin the wheels for Becky Lynch between the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, for example. Like you say, it's the best feud they've got going. There's some wonderful history in there about Sasha saying, I've got all this experience in there, and Bayley will just respond, well, you lose all the time in there, and your record generally on pay-per-view is pretty crap for the most part when I'm not by your side, sort of thing. I've got to give credit here to Michael Hamflett, who has fantasy booked this wonderfully. It's slightly convoluted, what with the draft being before Hell in a Cell, but Hamflett suggested that you have this match at Hell in a Cell for the SmackDown Women's Championship. But before that, Sasha gets drafted to Raw, so it's sort of like her last shot at the SmackDown Women's Championship. Of course, Bayley uses some shenanigans to win, and then Sasha wins the Rumble to challenge Bayley for her precious at WrestleMania. I think that's a wonderful bit of booking, but whether we do that or whether we just have, 3 matches, for example, back-to-back to take us through to the Royal Rumble or whatever, I think would be great too. And obviously, switching the title onto Sasha would mean Survivor Series gets really excited as well if they're going to do the whole Raw, SmackDown and NXT, but who knows what's happening with that. It's not November yet, which means it's not time for brand warfare. But in arguably a bigger piece of news than the main event of Hell in a Cell, I can officially announce right now, me and Adam Nicholas are doing the live stream. So what could possibly go wrong there? Let's talk a little bit about All Elite Wrestling now. Matt Cardona has told Pro Wrestling Junkies, or the Pro Wrestling Junkies podcast, I should say, which is a great wrestling podcast. Not quite as good as ours, but, really good. That his All Elite Wrestling deal expired. It actually expired at the All Out pay-per-view on the 5th of September. I believe we reported in the past that it was a sort of brief, I think it was a 5-appearance deal he initially signed with the option of potentially doing some more stuff. This is not to say that AEW have gone, well, bye, we don't need you anymore, or Matt Cardona is fed up with All Elite Wrestling after All Out. It was just almost like dipping his toe in the ocean. I think both parties are open to him returning in the future. He has openly said that he wants to chase championships in Jacksonville. But I enjoyed his brief appearance. It just seems surprising, but then not surprising when you know what sort of deal he signed, that it was such a brief shot in there.
Yeah, it was I liked his comment here about how he wants to be around for longer than it takes to get a couple of t-shirt designs out. That's pretty neat. I believe it was Wrestling Inc.'s Raj Giri who came out shortly after Cardona's debut and said, look, it's a 5-appearance deal, all this stuff. Pretty simple situation here. 5 appearances have been made. Off I go. Cardona, I think it's probably and this is just my take on it. I think it's inevitable that he'll be back, right?
Yeah.
He's got that relationship with Cody and the guys, obviously. But also when he appeared, his first tag match, him and Cody against John Silver and Alex Reynolds, popped a nice little quarter-hour number on Dynamite. This is a dude who you don't really, I personally don't realize how popular this guy is until I look at his social media numbers and his Twitch numbers and so forth. He's got a massive following, Matt Cardona, inside and outside of wrestling. He obviously does the Action Figure podcast with Brian Myers as well. So it makes a lot of sense in the world to use him. Also, since leaving WWE, he's massive. He's just spent that entire time pounding protein shakes and lifting barbells, so fair play. He's a unit. He makes a lot of the AEW roster members look like very small men. Such is his weight gain. That makes it sound like he's been scoffing burgers. He's a beef. He's a beefy boy.
I need to reveal from my sources, by the way, what he's doing in the interim. He is, according to my sources, and I obviously can't reveal them, and they definitely aren't just made up, he's going back to WWE. It is going to be Matt Cardona versus Roman Reigns, because Roman hit a Rough Rider, don't forget, a Clash of Champions, and that's the start of a little feud, I reckon. I've been told.
Okay. Okay, so moving on.
If you want to, just go full Biden and tell me to shut up, man. I don't mind.
Jesus, let's not talk about that. Let's not talk about the bloody debate, Jesus. Let's move over to Raw Underground, right? The real reason there was no WWE Raw Underground segments on this week's show is because Raw Underground absolutely sucks. Next story. Only joking. Fightful Select with the report here stating that basically because of what's currently going on in WWE, because of the reported outbreak the other week, and because so many people have come into contact with people who have tested positive, simply weren't enough bodies available. And this led the company to decide that maybe Raw Underground shouldn't be a priority this week. This has had a real noticeable impact on WWE programming recently. You've got the Retribution members who came into contact with somebody. You've got Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax as well. Nikki Cross was pulled from the Clash Champions pay-per-view. We're not going to speculate on who's done what based on who was missing Raw and so forth. But there are people who've come out and said, I'm okay, but I came into contact with. No word on whether or not Raw Underground will return for next week, but it's fair play, right? You've got to imagine that a lot of the people who are in the crowd at Raw Underground, and guys like Dabakato as well, are training at the Performance Center and so forth, and may have come into contact with people who tested. It is what it is. I can't say Raw Underground was really missed, no. but Braun Strowman's there now, and he's bald and angry like me. Help.
I figured this would be the case. I'll be honest, I had my money on Vince McMahon, forgot it was a thing this week, but it makes a lot of sense with all the ongoing issues, the stuff we've reported recently, and just the fact you look at it and go, well, that's a human petri dish right there. So I completely understand why they don't do that, but absolutely no need to hurry back. Shane McMahon going, sick, he kicked him in the head. I really don't need that every single sodding week. Speaking of things we don't need, a new theme from Aleister Black was, of course, unveiled on Raw this week. You know, the one that goes Aleister Black. Spot on impression, that. But do not blame WWE necessarily for what we got, because a new report from Fightful Select actually says that Aleister Black himself was involved in the process of selecting a new song, with WWE actually reaching out to the outlet to clarify this after seeing everyone's negative online reaction. Of course, the reasoning why these themes have changed, not just his, but like Keith Lee's, and I'm sure they've asked a whole load of other ones, is because of the whole CFO CF, I never know how to pronounce their name, and their terrible deal with publishers about royalties and stuff. Some wrestlers have been asked and said, no, I'll stick with my music, thanks. Some are open to change. But I suspect this is probably a sign of a few things to come, Andy.
Yeah, I can imagine there'll be further changes later down the line. Say what you will about CFOs and their loops and stuff. I know a lot of people didn't like the loops, but I think it's kind of hard to argue that their themes weren't more dynamic and engaging than some of the ones that have been offered up. Keith Lee's is just CAW music from a 2K game, right? It's just so boring. The Aleister Black one, it's like, man, if you didn't want the CFO's theme with Incendiary's frontman, why didn't you just like recruit another really sick metal or hardcore band to record something for you? Why not throw some dollars at like Year of the Knife or Terminal Nation? I'm being really obscure here, but why not do that? Why do you come up with this? Weird. But Aleister Black was up for it, so fair play.
You've literally just re-signed Josiah Williams, friend of the channel, and the guy who was there, if you may remember, rapping Adam Cole out to the ring at one of the takeovers. Get him involved. He's so talented, and he can't do any worse than what they're going with right now. So that seems like a real backhanded compliment. We're a big fan of Josiah Williams here at WhatCulture. Anyway, let's move on to your Twitter questions. At WhatCulture WWE, of course, if you want to get in touch with us. First question today comes from Bryant the Gimpy, who says, with the draft coming up, do you think we could see Keith Lee going to SmackDown to challenge Roman Reigns for the Universal title?
Yeah, I think we could. I know he's only just arrived on Raw and such, but it's like, man, he's already kind of spinning his wheels a little bit. He's removed now from the Drew versus Randy feud, it seems, and there was the report last week stating that WWE wants to present him as a top star, but they don't have any specific storyline plans for him. To me, it feels like that's definitely something that could happen, even though he's only been on Raw for like 3 months.
Yeah, exactly.
3 months? Like 4 weeks?
Yeah. It felt weird just having that squash match with Andrade. I felt like that was just a sign of like, well, Andrade's going to SmackDown and we can pretend like he hasn't lost for the last 6 months. But yeah, I could very much see Keith Lee going to SmackDown and getting a refresh, like you say, 28 days into being on the main roster or wherever it may be. Second question today comes from Cody Miller, who says, with RVD being a free agent and Tony being an ECW mark, could we see him in AEW for a minute? RVD versus Jungle Boy.
Oh, man. I don't necessarily think so. No shade on RVD or whatever. Like, I think he played a very complimentary role in Impact and certainly attracted a lot of attention with his more outlandish segments and images, shall we say. But I just don't really see how he fits in AEW. I'm not sure there's a particularly great role for him there. Maybe he could put over a guy like Jungle Boy, but does Jungle Boy need that at this stage? I feel like Jungle Boy's already quite well established on his road to the top. So I just don't see where he fits.
I wouldn't be surprised to see him in a one-off appearance, let's say, in like a casino battle royal.
Sure.
But I don't see him, full-time signing even for like 3 months or whatever it is with the company. But who knows? We'll keep an eye on it, and any developments we will keep you posted. Final question. Well, it's not really a question. It's more of a statement that we were tagged in, and I wanted to sort of ask you about, Andy. It's from Total Views Official TV. It says, in the WWE universe, the ongoing global bastard have prevented the Raw debut of James Storm and also kept Robert Roode in his homeland. If you're telling me that the almost said the word I'm not allowed to say, otherwise we get demonetized. The ongoing global bastard has prevented a beer money reunion. I'll just add that to the list of what could have been in 2020. Do you think that could have happened, and would you have liked to have seen it, Andy?
It could have happened, I think, and I would have liked to have seen it. Look, Bobby Roode has one of the best. Here's my really base level reason for this. Bobby Roode has one of the best wrestling themes of the past decade. Who composed that theme? CFOs. Glorious is going in the bin. They're going to give him something really crap in his place, like wonderful, so if you're going to change, the entrance theme is like really important to his character. It's a big part of it. If you're going to change things up, you might as well change the entire act. How do you change Bobby Roode's entire act? You reform Beer Money, one of my favourite TNA Impact tag teams ever, maybe. I think it'd be a lot of fun. I almost called him James Hunt. Rest in peace, James Hunt. I miss you, man. James Storm is a very accomplished tag team wrestler, the NWA tag team champion, obviously, at the moment. I think it would make all the sense in the world. A lot more sense than perhaps pushing Storm as a singles act, although I think he'd do a good job at that as well.
I remember Miller interviewing James Storm years ago when we had him on a WCPW show, and the speculation was swirling then about him going to WWE, and he seemed very interested in something like that. I would love to see Beer Money, and for someone like Robert Roode, who has been brought back and then immediately lost, obviously, and I sense is probably going to be, no offence to him, but forgotten about, and I think that's a real waste of a sensational talent. I love this, and I feel like Street Profits versus Beer Money, or anything like that. I realised I saw this tweet yesterday, and Sidge was just like, yeah, they put him with Street Profits for 4 straight months and just ruined the whole thing, which he's probably right. But yeah, I think it'd just be nice to see WWE going, okay, no, we are investing in an actual tag team rather than just you're relatively similar for reasons we can't mention. There you go, shove them together. Right, let's move on to today's and finally, and if we're struggling for an and finally, I always just go to Malcolm Bivens because he's sick on Twitter, basically. And he has speculated, what if the draft included other shows? Malcolm Bivens has been drafted to Blackish for 2 seasons, so I thought I'd use this as a jumping off point for you to suggest to us what shows you'd like to see WWE performers on. Let us know either in the comments or on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. We'll mention some of the best ones tomorrow. What do you reckon, Andy? I
would like to see Bray Wyatt as The Fiend or as himself on Pat Sharp's Funhouse.
Oh, nice. I'm now having Cameron Grimes on 90 Day Fiancé. So let us know in the comments, as I said, on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE, what you reckon to that. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And subscribe to What Culture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from, for daily wrestling podcasts. Myself and the Dudley Boys looking forward to tonight's Wednesday Night War a little bit later on. As I said, let us know your thoughts on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. And whilst you're there, follow both of us. You can follow Andy Murray at
Andy H. Murray. The H stands for Happy Birthday, Cameron Grimes.
Yeah! Hope you have a birthday and a cake and a party that goes easy right to the moon, baby! What a guy. I'm going to have to buy his t-shirt on. It's just a given by now. Follow me on Twitter at WhatCulture. No, that's not me. That's the company I work for. At Adam Wilborn, that's me. Follow us all at WhatCultureWWE, as I said. But for now, my thanks to Andy Murray. Thank you for watching. Happy birthday, Cameron Grimes. And we will see you soon.